Hi everybody. So I want to do just a real quick video on materials. Oddly enough, a lot of people, they even take classes in rock painting and they come out and they don't know where to get anything. So I thought this would be really helpful for people. So our first item is, where do you get rocks? Well, one common place are hardware stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, Orchard Supply. If you go to their garden center, where they have the plants and stuff, they'll have bags of landscaping rocks in varying sizes. Sometimes they tend to be big bags of rocks. If you want to select each rock, a good resource for that is again landscaping places. One we have here is the Bark Place or Pacific Stone, and these tend to have big outdoor bins. So go on a nice day. Don't do what I did and go when it's cold and rainy and you're standing out there trying to get your rocks as the rain's coming down. Go on a nice day and you can sort through the and pick out what type of rocks you want. Generally, you get river rocks because those tend to be kind of smooth. If you take a bag, at ours it's $1 a bag, so you take your own bag or they have bags there. And the other places sometimes you can find them are even the dollar store or um, craft stores like Michael's or Joann's. And if you look there, look in the floral department where they have the plastic flowers, because people use these for, they put them in bowls and then they put the plants on them. The only downside to those is sometimes those have been coated with something, and that can be an issue for the paint adhering. Not always, but sometimes. So that's where you get rocks. The next item up is a lot of times people like to start with pens because pens are a little easier to work with than brushes. This is a Posca pen, which is a very, is that the right way up for you guys? There we go. A very common brand for painting rocks. And the paint goes on real well. These are kind of expensive. There's other brands of them that I actually haven't tried. But the other thing you can do is if you get this item called gesso, which is in the art supply part, you can coat your rocks with that, and that will basically turn your rock into a paintable, drawable surface. You can get gesso. White is very typical, and it's nice to have a white background sometimes. You can get black, which makes, here, I have one here, a stunning background. The black backgrounds are used a lot in mandala rocks, which I will get into in a minute. Um, I often use clear on mine, and the reason is that if I'm painting a waterfall or something where you want to retain the rock color, the clear gesso makes for a nice ground. You don't have to use gesso. It just sometimes makes it easier because you're more sure that your paint is going to adhere to the rock surface. The gesso too, the other good thing about using gesso, and I don't know if that's true of any of these rocks. Let me try them. See, these I think, see, here's one. Now see what that did? When I make this rock wet, it changes color. And when it dries, it's going to go back to this. Well, if you coat it with gesso, which I did on this one, see, now it doesn't do that. And sometimes that can be a little nicer if you're painting on something, because the color is going to be fixed. The gesso will fix that background color. And the next thing we want to talk about then, if you're not using pens, would be paint. Most common types used are craft paint. These are two very common brands, Folk Art and Americana. I have a slight prejudice towards Folk Art. I think the colors tend to be just a little bit, they use a little bit more pigment, but Americana is a very nice brand. Ceramcoat's fine. I haven't tried some of the new ones. I know Martha Stewart does a line. So if you're using paint, then you probably want paint brushes. What type of paint brushes, you may ask. People have asked me that. The type of paintbrush that you want to get is acrylic. These are acrylic paints, and you want to get acrylic brushes. Sometimes you get multi-purpose brushes. Oil and acrylic are very common. You'll see when it says used for oil or acrylic, that's fine. You don't want to get ones that are specifically for oil paint, and the reason is because They make those for use with a solvent rather than water. And if you put them in water, it doesn't damage them, it doesn't hurt them, but they poof out. And once they're poofed out, you pretty much can't use them until they dry again. So acrylic brushes are better. I don't get watercolor brushes for use with acrylics. I don't see why you couldn't, but I'm assuming there's a reason why they make watercolor versus acrylic brushes, so I always just got acrylic. Now, if you have paint, you want a palette. Paper plate works fine for a palette. If you're dotting, a lot of times you might want something like this. Now, I got a set of 6 of these at Dollar Tree for $1, and you just pour the paint in these little cups. And that's kind of nice if you're going to dot, then it doesn't dry out and it doesn't spread out. If you put it on a paper plate or a palette, it's going to, these thinner paints are going to spread out a little bit. They're going to dry a little faster. Now, that leads me to dotting. Now, the first time I saw dotting, it was 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like, ooh, I want to do that now. And of course, you know, I'm not going to run to a store and look for dotting tools. There's nothing open, and not a lot of places carry dotting tools. At least they didn't then. They might now. So I found this handy do-it-yourself method of sticking a straight pin into a pencil eraser, and you can also just leave the eraser and make big dots with that. You can use the tip of a pencil. You can use a bamboo skewer. The important thing to remember with dotting is the dots will get smaller with each successive dot unless you dip it in the paint. So if you're doing dots all the same size, dip it in the paint each time. If you want it to gradually get smaller, then don't, and it'll gradually get smaller. And that's done. Oh, then the final thing would be, of course, and this is the most common question is, okay, so then what what do you do with it then? And what you do with it then is you let it dry. I like to let them dry at least a day. If I'm using a fine art paint, like this is a Liquitex Soft Body, which is a fine art paint, but thin like a craft paint, but a little bit more pigment, I might give it a little longer to dry, even a few days. Then this is what I use. This is Ceram Coat Gloss Exterior Interior Varnish. This works really well. You brush this on. A soft brush or a foam brush works well. My preference is a little bit, sometimes when you go to buy a brush, you feel them, and some of the brushes are stiff and some of them are real soft. I like a soft brush for the varnish because every now and then, especially if I don't gesso first, the paint doesn't adhere quite as well as I would like. And a stiff brush will just take that off. The other thing you can use, pardon my reach, are these handy foam brushes. And there again, just when you go to varnish, just do it real lightly at first, just in case. I have had, if you don't let these Posca pens or whatever pen you're using, I've had them run. I assume I needed to dry it longer. I live in Oregon. In the winter, things don't dry too fast, lots of moisture in the air. So I assume that was the problem. Well, anyway, I think that covers materials. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below or contact me. My website is zenbreeze.com, and there's whole lots of ways you can contact me. I've been selling my art online since 2002, and I am everywhere. So send me a message if you have any questions, and I'll look forward to talking to you. I hope this has been of use to you. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.